Hello, everyone. My name is JD Calderon. This is Indie Comics Explained. Yet again, I brought another fantastic group of independent comic creators. So please hit like, hit subscribe, share out the video, let everyone know we're here. And I put this guy on, because Tom, how are you, sir?
Good.
Good. Please introduce.
Tom Hutchison, writer, publisher, art director, all things Big Dog Inc. We're celebrating 15 years of the company, of Penny for Your Soul, of Critter this year. We are running a campaign for about 10 more days, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then we'll be running into our 15-year anniversary of The Legend of Oz in 2026.
All right, cool. Charlie.
Hey.
How are you, sir?
Good, man. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Please introduce yourself.
Charlie McElvy, creator creator of all things Zion Studios and Blind Squirrel Comics, with a few exceptions. We'll talk about one of those tonight. Here to just have a good time and talk about the good stuff and promote everybody's campaigns here with you.
All right, cool.
Hey,
Scott.
doing well. My
How you
name is Scott Fogg, and I'm a comic book writer. I've been a writer for my entire life and got into comics about 13, 14 years ago. And just an indie writer trying to make his way through the world.
Yeah, I know how that feels.
Hey,
Katie,
doing good.
How you doing? Please introduce
Yeah, I'm
yourself.
Katie Shaw. I'm the cartoonist for Dragon Child, and I make the beautiful dragons behind me. So, yeah.
Cool. Anyway, how you doing,
Yes,
Tom?
Pinchuk. Yes.
Pinchuk.
It's just it looks. Trust me. So I'm Tom Pinchuk. I've written for various publishers and network shows at Cartoon Network. I have also written for Heavy Metal Magazine, Archaea, which is now Boom, and various other ones. Right now I'm working on Clash of the Classics, which is my own project, and it's my first one on Kickstarter, so it's very exciting. As of recording right now, we've got about 18 days left in the campaign, so we're in the thick of it.
All right. Very nice. Very nice. All right. Cool. So, I'm sure everyone, I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at this. Should you be doing this? Right? I have a very specific reason for asking this question. And I'll reveal that at the end. But,
Yes.
Scott,
Okay.
you're in the hot seat. So, you're up first. So should
I ask myself that a lot. Honestly, why do this? And rather be doing everything in my life has been, every job I've had has been to pay the bills so that I can write, until writing maybe pays the bills. I hear that's something some people can do. Should I be doing it? I would be supremely unhappy if I wasn't. And every time I try to stop and go, no, writing's not for me, publishing isn't for me, it becomes a very sad, dark world. And so, yes, if you want Scott in the world, he needs to be doing this.
That's fair. That's fair. Katie, what are your thoughts?
I, got the pleasure of selling issue 1 of my comic Dragon Child to a little boy who, somewhere in elementary school. So we read issue 1, loved it. We need to get more. And so that's me going, thank you. You're allowing me to continue doing this. And that's why I keep doing it. But yeah, I make the joke that, I've had ideas like what I'm making my whole life, and, not for telling stories and drawing pictures and sharing it with people, I would go crazy. So yeah, I will continue because I couldn't not.
Okay, cool. Tom, what are your thoughts?
I did like how general it was, because it did get me really examining everything I was doing today. Should I be doing this? But yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about making comics. That's the this we're referring to.
Yes.
One thing I'll say anecdotally is I actually teach for UCLA's night school. It's been like the four corners of the experience, because I've been doing this since I was a teenager, in terms of just like having an interest in writing and writing scripts, whether that's doing professionally or not. But a lot of times I do have students who are later on in life, and they never had any creative expression whatsoever. And it's something that I think it's very easy to take that for granted. If you and it's something that I think it's been I do it part time, but it's been something I continue to do because I enjoy it, and I think it's partly it's because it's a nice reminder of what I'm doing and why and where I am, and it's something where when I talk to people at length, there is a sort of that I hear from them, because they just haven't had any form of expression. It just on that basic level, I think is something that you can definitely see how it gnaws on somebody over the years. And so, and this is also something that I run into sometimes when I have, when I've had anything creative about it, or they have any experience with creativity, and it's sort of like the analogy I like to use is like if you go on a diet and you don't eat chocolate for like a month or 2 months, and when you finally break the diet, it's just I've had that. I've seen that happen a lot of times, where it's something where if I'm I've done custom comics for like soy cultivation, and simply feeling like they were seen and recognized and heard, or that they had something a little more color to what their day-to-day was. It was like one of the clients even said that she was crying reading the comic that we made for her, and so I think that's not something.
Good, I like it. Very nice.
Well, apparently it's the four loco of like life, right? Creative life. It's a depressant and antidepressant, right? I think is what Scott and Katie were saying. Right?
Yep.
But no, I right is, should I be doing this? Not in a negative way, but it's. I think everything you do, you have to question: is this something I should keep perpetuating for different reasons, right? And it's a personal philosophy. You have to. Why am I on this path, right? I think that's the only reason you ask the questions. Where am I going with this? Where is it taking me? Where do I want to go with it? Those kinds of questions. It's like it's almost like I don't know if any of you watched Babylon 5, but you had the who are you and what do you want, right? And it's the same. It's the juxtaposition of what do I want out of this, and what is it doing for me or to me? And I think that's I think it's important to ask the question. So for me, yes, absolutely. In fact, this year I was like, the hell am I? Why am I doing so much? Like this is I had this big. We've got one running right now, and it'll be the last one of the year, I think. And I'm not going to question, but should I be doing this? Should I be doing 6 to 8 Kickstarters a year? Maybe. But I think for me the answer is no. But don't stop. You know what I mean? And so that's where I'm at with it. Yeah.
Tom, what do you think, sir?
So everybody's kind of landing in the same, more or less in the same spot, and I'm kind of there too. I think there's really kind of two aspects of should I be doing this? The question, like there's two sides of the coin. The first is, what are you getting out of it? To pay your bills? Are you getting something purely creative out of it? Is it something that you're doing for therapy to, get through whatever is in your brain and just put it into the world? And all those things are valid, and you have to kind of decide for yourself, like, is this working? Whether it's trying to make it your job, whether it's trying to just have creative outlet, or whatever it happens to be. So I think that's kind of the first side of the coin. And the other side of the coin is, well, what else is there? But at the same time, most people still have their 9-to-5 job. They're doing comics on the side. So, should we be doing this for what? To make this our job? Should we be doing this just for the fun of it? So there's a lot of layers to the thing. But for me, I should I be doing this? It's yes, because I made a decision a long time ago that this is what I was going to do for my living. Like, I'm going to make that real attempt at, I don't have the 9-to-5 job anymore. I haven't had it for a very long time. So it's a must for me, as far as just turning the lights on and having the internet so that I can be here. So that's a yes, I must do this. I have to do this. But at the same time, I also can see, after doing this now for 15 years, I can see the sort of leveling up of my craft of writing, my understanding of art, and that I see them and so on. It's connected me to other companies. I've been published by Dynamite and Aspen. So it has been, the goal was make Big Dog Inc., make your comics, make a living. That was basically it. But that has branched off into also work for Dynamite, also work for Aspen, also work for other companies, and again, still in the context of making a living, but now in other people's sandboxes and other people's properties, and so that's worked too. So I think for me, it's definitely, I should be doing it because I have essentially burned the bridges around me, and there's not really an easy option to just be like, nah, no more comics. I'm just going back to real estate or whatever it was that I was doing before. So this is sort of the floating barge that I put myself on, and we got to keep going.
All right, that's good. Now, I asked this question because, I was in a mood for the last couple of weeks, going through this existential crisis, and it's funny because, huh? Oh, it's definitely comics. Yeah. Partially comics and partially, but and I was being a little snarky at the time too, but then I heard something was reported that DC Comics is now the #1 comic book publisher in the market. They surpassed Marvel Comics, and a lot of their that gain came from 2 places. Well, 3 places technically. Dark Horse, Image, and us. And what I mean by us is the lack of independent comic books appearing in retail centers, right? Because we no longer have that available to us. Diamond gave us that, right? But with Diamond being gone, Lunar, they don't want to bother with small presses. What is it? Penguin Random House, they certainly don't want us. Universal, we're waiting on. Philbo, he's trying, but he's still new, so it's going to be a while before that comes about, right? So I say this: yes, we are all needed. Okay, every dollar that every person here who's here, and every other person on Kickstarter, every other person that goes to a convention that makes a buck selling their comics is one less dollar that'll be in their pockets, and that's how I feel about it. Okay, one less dollar for them. We're never going to break the backs of Marvel and DC, but if I could take 1 or 2 percentage points away from their quarterly statements, I'm more than happy about it. So yes, because
so Jay is all about the spite
Yo,
aspect.
those people, they do not want us in their space.
Oh, that's for sure. I totally agree.
They don't want us. They haven't wanted us for years. Marvel sees us, we're a nuisance. All right. DC sees us, we're a nuisance. That's what we are to them. We're 1 or 2% of the market.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I fully believe that Marvel and DC specifically do not advertise their product because they don't want people going into a comic book store and seeing that something else exists besides them. Because that's what would happen.
It wouldn't surprise me. You know, would not surprise me. So yeah. So that's how I feel about it. It's one of those things. And I know there's a lot of good people that work up there. They are crushing us, and that's just what's happening. And they don't want diversity. They don't want a diversity of product line. They don't want us showing up and becoming anything more than what we are, other than the most minor portion of the market, right? If we were to grow to 5 or 6%, they will probably lose their minds because they're like, you know, they're losing creators all the time because they're not paying them the way they used to. Mm-hmm. They don't want to give them contracts where it would be more lucrative for them. And if creators had other avenues other than just image, you know, because they're, you know, the gatekeeping there's tough, but I think it's fair what they're offering. But even then, even if you get in there, there's certain things you got to get past because there's a certain amount of level of books you have to sell, so on and so forth. But I think it is important for all of us to keep striving forward and keep making the books that we're making, you know, and keep making the best books we can make.
Well,
so.
You reminded me of a conversation I had with a professional creator. I won't say what their position is because I don't know how much I'm supposed to say, but I asked for a collaborative effort with that individual, and they said, yeah, when my contract ends, so let's get it on the books like now, and then when the contract ends, I can move out. And I was like, what are you going to do? And he's like, well, after my exclusive contract ends, I'm going free world. I'm going to do my own stuff. I'm going to create my, and so they have established themselves with the sole purpose, not the sole purpose, but one of their primary goals of doing the gig they've been doing and signing the original contract for exclusivity for a period of years wasn't just the pay. That was great. It was fine. To your point, it's not everything. But the bigger part to them was building a persona that is bigger than they were before they joined, and then they take that brand. Now it's a brand, and they take that brand and they go out and do their own thing. Now they'll be wildly successful versus just going and making their own thing and trying to build the brand from the grassroots level, which works, by the way. I mean, it does work. There's plenty of indie creators who are actually doing really well because they started it in indie and their book or their product or whatever it was successful, and then they got a gig doing something for a Zenescope or for a Boom or whomever, and then that got, you know, someone else saw that and said, hey, I want to sign you to, you know, whatever. So there's it's interesting though. I think you're right. I think that indie is the freedom of indie comics is really appealing to most of us. The pay isn't, but and somebody asked me when I was in Baltimore, they were like, hey, would you work for Marvel or DC? I said they'd never hire me, but sure, I'd work for them. They go, great for them because that's what they're paying me to do. But I'm doing it for this guy ultimately, and the people in this house, right? So anyway, it comes down to, you know, for me, building that brand up is doing what happened in '93, which will never happen again. But you know, you're seeing glimpses of stuff like that though with Ghosts. Thank you.
Ghost Machine.
I read 5 of their books and I can't think of what the hell they're. I get totally distracted by emoji talk here. I'm trying to translate, but you know, like my ADHD just went crazy. Squirrel. Anyway, so I'll shut up. But you see what my point was is basically, you know, indie is great, and it attracts a lot of talent. Doesn't pay well until you do something significant, whether it's your DC. And so.
Cool. Tom.
Well, I think what I might offer about that is, you know, kind of, I mentioned, you know, in my class, I've met people at the start of their journey, and are very, very successful as TV writers.
Mhm.
I'm not going to name any names, but one of my probably the most successful guy I know is also the most miserable.
Mhm.
And it's because he's worked on all these shows, and he's successful shows. He's been a writer producer on them, and live action show that's been on basic cable that's been based on a certain comic book that's not by the big two. That kind of narrows it down a little bit. But I always remember there was one time where I was grabbing dinner with him and then see what Twitter reactions were to his episode that he'd written. And I think what I saw was this really mounting frustration in him that he was not, even though he was working on the show, he was not associated with his work.
Mm.
So I think there's a lot of value to that in the sense that, I think we obviously talk about, creative freedom, about whether you're dealing with executives or editors who are giving you notes or telling you what to do or how to color within the lines. There is also a lot of value in being associated with your work. Like if a tree falls in the woods, and if no one's there to hear it, meaning that they'll work on these shows and they're successful shows and they have a big fan base. It's not designed for the viewers to realize because it wouldn't be a continuous experience. But then you see some of them. I mean, you're asking the question of should you do it? I've seen them ask that question themselves because they've been at it for 20 years. They don't have fans. They don't have someone who said, "Hey, I read something of yours, or I watched it, and I think that you brought a unique voice to that was unique from other writers that I've seen, and it really resonated with me." And that gnaws at them. I've seen that gnaw at them. So I do think that, and the big irony of it all to me was the fact that the show that he was writing on was based. I think that was kind of an interesting. I mean, long tail of you. In fact, I even kept telling him, like, maybe you should think about doing your own thing, or investing in yourself, or what, whether that's time or money, and he just couldn't do it. And that was something I even, frankly, ran a year or two ago. There was this interesting kind of division among the writers who were members, because there were some who were very frustrated about being in this machine where they're working on somebody else's show, they're executing somebody else's vision, and then when they got 6 months to work on anything else, they were drawing a blank. But then there were other members who they saw that as a time of, like, finally I get to do my passion project, finally I get to either make a comic or produce a play or write my novel. And I thought what was very interesting was, like, that year during Comic-Con, a lot of people who were working in movie and TV were acting as if, like, that, or movies and TV were acting as if that was going to be completely gutted as an experience, because there weren't going to be any panels about movies or TV shows, because the WGA and SAG, what's not under the purview of both of those organizations? Comic books, novels, audio dramas, video games, tabletop games, any of those things. And so I was really pleased to see that a lot of friends actually were cleaning up at that to them. So I think that there's 1,000 ways questions to answer when you're charting your own destiny. I do also think there's a value to, you've made your own thing. It's your thing. You're associated with your work. The fans of it are fans of you. And that's also something that, you have the mobility to do that. If you're maybe outside of certain systems, that there might even be some people who are in there that's kind of a guilty cage to them. You know, they've been at it for a long time and they're not associated with the work. It's always somebody else's idea that they're just executing. So, you know, that's I don't know. I guess that's what kind of comes to mind just when I hear that. Is just that we were saying, should you be doing this? That's a question everybody from the top to the bottom is asking themselves. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I love the perspective because it's so different, you know, from we're hearing, you know, from where we're at, you know. All right, cool. All right. Does anybody else have anything to add? Or,
I want to say one thing real quick. So
right.
I don't know if I am the complete oddball out, but creator. I did not start my interest in comics with either Marvel or DC. And the only DC comic that I own was the Shazam run by Jeff Smith.
Nice.
And he was the comic that got me into comics and not just strip comics. So from the standpoint of interested in the main two, I've never been interested in the main two. And part of that is the type of stories that they're telling. Part of it is the fact that it's, you know, always the same characters. So where do you even start? And with indie comics, it's at least new stories by people, and you can point at it and say, you know, that's from that person or this set of people. And Marvel and DC doesn't have that and that makes it interesting to me, you know, as far as indie comics. And, you know, when I'm going into a comic shop or even just, you know, I'm at a show, I'm looking at the other stuff that's there, indies is the only thing I actually pay attention to. And part of it is, again, the personal connection with the people actually making the thing. And it's also the fact that, you know, the art is more interesting to me. Weirdo, but that's always been my perspective.
No, I think you
Yeah.
you kind of spoke for a lot of people, really, because you think about like today's, right? And it's for the same reasons you just mentioned, though. It's easy to start. You know, you grab a number one and just go, right? And whether it's one piece that goes on for thousands of it, or Heart Gear, which I read, there's only 5 tankobons, so it's only 5 volumes. It's done. So it encapsulates the story. It's the same as that. That's the thing that puts people in front of comics is a fresh new story, something they can start from one, and not be confused with where do I go? Do I get Tom Taylor's version? Do I get Tom King's version? Or
the other thing that I find more so with manga than with any American comics, whether it's indie or not, is that, you know, you're not going to be looking at it and going, am I even watching the same thing that I read? And I feel that does a real, you know, the lack of ability for American media to do that in a lot of cases does a disservice to the original material and sort of, you know, sets the fans off, if you will. Whether or not that's something that they even acknowledge, you know, is a point of contention for me about many, many things. But, you know, it's one of those deals as well where is comic the things that drives me nuts in media is, and it's especially true with comics and with animation, is the question of, is this the medium in which you wanted to tell the story? And for me, the answer is, well, of course it is. As opposed to, well, isn't the end goal to have you get a live action movie of it? And I'm like, but why? Does anybody else feel that way? I mean,
well, the why is because you reach a much larger audience. I mean, even if you're just on Tubi, you have the potential to reach literally millions of people with your weird movie that you made, you know, based on your whole, based on your thing. So, but I think the other part of that is it used to be special, right? Now anybody with a phone makes a movie, and it's a movie, it's a feature, it's whatever. So it's almost easy to make a movie now. So it's one of the things that kind of I think is hurting movie theater experience is that everybody just makes their own movies now. Like they're not worried about the movie stars. They want to be their own movie stars. So they just pick up their own cameras. They make their own films. They throw their stuff on Amazon and Tubi, and they're like, look, I'm a filmmaker. I'm making all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, technically. And in the same way, it's sort of like with comics, except what's the term? The ease of access to create it is very, very low. You can make a comic book for a very low amount of money. Entry point, yeah. Whereas even with films, you used to need $100,000 to make a decent movie, and now that just keeps dropping down. So
right. I guess my main point though is the fact that if I were to imagine my product in another format, I would go with an animated feature as opposed to a live action. And the reason for that is the art itself is part of.
Sure, but that's still transferring it into a movie. Call it a movie. However you want to do a live action or whatever. We all want our stuff to be a movie, a TV show. We all want it to be. There's no one here that could tell me otherwise. You want it to be a movie or a TV show. We all want it because again, it levels us up at minimum eyeballs on the product. It puts eyeballs on us as creators, just like Tom was talking about. When you're just like a writer in a writer room, you literally have to break out of that. It's like Conan O'Brien, right? He used to be a writer in the Simpsons, but it was only when he started doing his own show that he became Conan O'Brien, right? Otherwise, he was just Conan on the Simpsons writing the thing. So comics is basically you're the director, right? So most people, when they watch movies, they know Kevin Smith made his own movies, right? So we're Kevin Smith within our own little tiny bubbles of making comics. Like I made this comic, I maxed out my credit card, and I made these comics, and now we're on our way. So that's sort of the creator economy that we're in now. We don't need publishers anymore. We don't need anything other than our own creative energies, and then the internet takes us wherever we want to go, whether you're selling on a website or Kickstarter or whatever it happens to be. So that's I know we don't come into comics with necessarily the end goal of like I want a movie made, but no one's going to say no to that opportunity if that door should open.
Sure.
Well,
Right, but if it doesn't, you're still happy as heck to get the
Of
comic.
course, I totally agree. Totally agree.
I mean,
yeah.
I think the thing I might offer about this is I got to meet Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird and have pretty long conversations with both of them. And I don't think, if you're talking about success stories in terms of multimedia brands, I don't think you get much bigger than the Turtles, for sure. But I think what was it was kind of interesting talking to both of them because around the same time I sold the show to Cartoon Network and was in develop. We were in negotiation meetings for it, and one of the things that was eye-opening about my contract negotiations was our lawyer kept trying to push to make us executive producers on that, and I was asking, well, what does that mean in comparison to co-executive producer, consulting producer, all that sort of stuff? And my manager basically explained to me, well, what that means is when the network has a meeting about how to market this in Thailand or Brazil, you're either going to be in that meeting or the results of that meeting are going to be relayed to you after the fact. And I was aware of at the time that, if I'm there and wanting to shoot my brains out because I'm having to be in a long meeting and having to, go over all this logistical stuff, I'm going to remember that I had a team that argued to get me into this seat. And what was interesting was that was coinciding when I got to know, Kevin and Peter. And that was kind of the thing that everybody neglects about the story of the Ninja Turtles was Peter Laird would say in interviews, I got into this just to make a fun comic. It grew way beyond what I ever expected it to be. I never got to make comics for 20 years, and that's how we put it, because I was busy in meetings approving merchandise. When there's Ninja Turtles toilet paper, I have to get the input in. When there's Ninja Turtles toothpaste, I have to put the input on it. And then also, Eastman was so fed up of doing that after a short amount of time, he sold his interest in the Turtles so he could go run heavy metal. And it was specifically because he wanted to go make his own comics. on his own. And then the irony of the whole thing is that eventually, and the whole time, by the way, too, there were aspects of the Ninja Turtles show they didn't like. You know, the whole notion of them being these like surfer dudes with color coordinated masks was not their idea. You know, there were things that were added in the Ninja Turtles movies that they didn't want either. You know, and they just kind of it kind of grew beyond them. And then eventually they sold their interest. And I think the biggest irony of it all to me is, what do after they sell their interest in the thing? They go back to making Turtles comics for IDW as work for hire, basically, because they're back to just doing what they want to do, you know, why they started to do in the first place. So it's like, I'm not going to say that I would ever say no. Obviously, I think, you know, to the other Tom's point, but I also just think sometimes that when people ask me like, oh, well, you know, what if this was a movie? Instead, I'm like, well, what does that do for you? You know, does they cast somebody that's going to be hot as an actor that I don't think is right for the role? So then, but that's how the movie gets made. Or, you know, if it's R-rated, but to get the movie made, it's going to be PG-13. Are you going to prefer seeing it in a 2-hour form that's compromised in some way, or if it's truncated instead of beginning to do an epic? You know, so I just think that's, I guess in the roundabout way, what I would just say is that that's always what's appealing to me about when you have a comic that's by an individual or just a small team, is there is a purity of intent to it in terms of this is what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it. They were passionate about it, and you can see the passion coming out of the pages. There's no, you know, and however many middlemen. I mean, sometimes in cases like that, you know, there was Turtles merch they didn't even know existed, you know, because they lost track of it. You know, does that feel? Do you feel like there's a personal creative connection to, you know, that, you know, merchandise between you know? So that's something I think is, again, I guess what I would offer about that is I just think that when, you know, and the question has come up when I'm at conventions and I just try to demur, but sometimes if they keep asking follow-ups about it, I'm like, well, what does that do for you that as a reader that you're not getting right now with reading this? Because I can tell you that there's a lot of examples of, you know, adaptations that lose the point.
Yeah. I don't know.
Sure, they lose the point, but there's definitely there's a very difficult bump in comics. Like if you do enough Comic Cons, you'll hear people just tell you, I don't read comics, but they're happy to go watch the Amazon Invincible cartoon. They're all about that, but they would never go read the comic books. So you have an opportunity when you move into other multimedia areas to simply expand the brand that you have. And if you're suddenly it's the same as if you were just go work for Marvel and be like, well, you know, I'm writing Spider-Man. Forever now you can say, I wrote Spider-Man. Even if you just wrote a few issues, you can eternally say, I wrote Spider-Man. Put that on your resume. Tell that to the fans. Hey, I wrote Spider-Man. If you like Spider-Man, check out the thing that I did over here. So I think that the multimedia thing is important in the concept of, in a way, some aspect of validation, because like we just said, anybody can make a comic. That's almost easy now. But if that comic transcends comics and becomes other things, that's when you have a property. That's when you truly have an IP that the larger audience that really doesn't go to the comic book store on every Wednesday and so on and so on. That's where those people get involved. And if your IP does end up being Surfer Turtles instead of, you know, Ronin Turtles, is it bad? The question, and again, that's a creator question. That goes deep into the creator question. Is it bad that the Turtles became Cowabunga? Was that a bad product, in other words? Versus if they had, let's just say they had control over it and they were like, no, we don't want to be Cowabunga. We want to be far more aggressive Turtles in our cartoon, which at the time that was never going to happen. Nowadays, sure, they're even going to get a Last Ronin, you know, thing is coming. But back in the 80s, it had to become what it became. And in the process, it gave them everything they could have ever imagined, but they both decided to walk away from it. So that's I don't think I would ever have walked away from it.
You know, it's funny. I always wondered, how is it that we got Surfer Dude Turtles out of New York City? I mean, How does that
Right? Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
you know, how does that happen? I said, but the thing is, we do have something else, and they are called monster hunters, especially Claymore. All right, now, Scott, what are we
Yes.
looking at? And I know Charlie, you're part of this. I don't know who's going to speak up for this one.
I'll go ahead. Monster Hunter called Claymore is a book that I've been working on for the past, I don't know how many years, because all of my stories, everything that I write comes from, it always starts with an idea or a message or something that I kind of want to say because I'm pretentious. And so I've always had this idea rattling around in my head for a long time. You're not born a monster. A monster is something you choose to be. And I thought it was a great idea. I thought it was a fine message and something I kind of wanted to say to people, but I could never find the story. And then one day, my family was on vacation, and I don't know how you guys are. Sometimes a story you have to wrestle with it and figure it out, and sometimes a story just kind of lands in your lap, and you're like, "Oh, I know A to B to D. I know everything about this. I know what to do." And that's what happened with Claymore. I was out on a boat, and all of a sudden, this whole story came into mind, which is this character named Robert Bollock, who is known by the name Claymore. He's a Scotsman in the American West, 1872, I believe the story takes place in, and he's wandering the West and helping towns with their monster problem. People reach out to him, say, "Hey, we've got a monster. Please come help." And him and this little foul-mouthed fairy that you can see there, they show up and they do what they can. And so it draws from a lot of my favorite stories. It draws from, obviously, I think we all are fans of Hellboy, and there's a bit of that in there. There's a bit of Doctor Who in there. There's my love of Westerns like Tombstone and Hell on Wheels. It's got a little bit of everything like that in it, and it's a completely self-contained story. My plan for Claymore, as long as it's successful, is the first few issues are all going to be self-contained single issue adventures. That way you don't have to worry about where am I jumping in at. But as a writer, I do also want to have those 3 or 4 stories add up to a greater whole. But that being said, if you come to the convention, find me at the table, I'm sold out of issues 1 and 2. You can still buy issue 3 and not be worried, "Oh shoot, what am I missing? What do I need to know?" It's like, nothing, my friend. Here you go. So yeah, that is kind of, I guess, Claymore in a little bit of a nutshell.
All right, cool. So you're saying this is issue 1 of a series of one shots?
Yes. This is issue 1. I know exactly what issue 2 is going to be, and probably issues 3 and 4. We will see how it all goes. Right now, my goal is issue 1 is to get this into people's hands, and then sometime next year, roll on to the next one. But yes, there is a bigger picture, a bigger story that I want to tell with these characters.
Cool.
Lynn Gogu is the artist. You might know him from Quests Aside, which is a really fun fantasy book. He was actually my first pick as an artist when I sat down and go, who needs to draw this? I was like, oh, I know exactly who needs to draw this. It's the guy who drew Quests Aside. I love that book. I have yet to meet him. He lives in Greece. But I reached out to him online. I was just like, hey, are you available? Are you interested? Here's the script. Tell me if this is a story you would like to tell. And Lynn said yes. And he said, I have a colorist friend who also lives here in Greece. His name is Dennis Yatris. Mm-hmm. Sorry if I mispronounced that last name. But we've always wanted to work together on something, and something like this. So it was just kind of this little match made in heaven. It felt like it all kind of came together very, very easily. One of the easiest projects I think I've worked on as far as like this creative team that I've gotten to work with. I've absolutely loved it.
All right, cool.
Yeah, when Scott brought it to me, he actually, when he pitched it to me, he gave me the log line. You know, it's kind of at the beginning there, 1872. You know, very dark and foreboding kind of a thing. And but he sent me 6 pages of finished pencils and inks, and I think 1 page color, Scott, maybe. Yeah. And I said, shit, this will be fun. Like, this is it was perfect too because I just broken off the Blind Squirrel imprint so that I can kind of isolate my more traditional comics, the superheroes and stuff like that, and even all ages stuff and stuff like Scott's Night Care, which I also publish, into this vein, and then like a DC Vertigo kind of a thing. And so this is the second title from Zion Studios. It's under the Zion Studios brand since that kind of schism, if you will. And it was great. It was a great departure from like American Yakuza, which is, a violent, earthy, gritty, urban. And this is a very Western, still violent, but
yes.
but the palette is brighter. It's a much more entertaining kind of a visual story in a sense, because it feels like I'm watching. I'm trying to think. It kind of reminded me of the Hobbit cartoons. You guys ever see that?
Yes.
You know which one I'm talking about. You're all old enough.
Yeah.
You look like you're old
Yep.
enough. Most of us.
The
I'm
Rankin
definitely.
Bass one.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Visually, it kind of gave me that sensation of that's the world I'm in, and so it immersed me immediately. And I was like, I'm in, Scott. Let's go. So it didn't really take. I don't think I even gave a slight hesitation. I think I was pretty much sold on one, it was Scott, and two, everything about the premise, and then again the visuals really helped me. It kind of sealed the deal for me.
All right, cool. Well, you guys got what? You got 19 days ago. You got 81 backwards.
Mhm.
All right, you got a little bit of hustle that goes on, but you have Scott, you have Charlie, so
Yeah.
he's gonna trust me. That man's a hustler. He's gonna get you there.
It is a tough sled, as he has been telling me, and I don't know what that means.
Kickstarter's just a wildly. It's definitely on a. There's a lot of things going on. You see at the bottom of the campaign, I actually promoted the Kickstarter United group.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. So I'm very big on promoting that. Tom, if you're not aware of that, it's similar to the SAG, the writer strike in a lot of ways. So, except they're not unionized. It's like that's kind of the difference. But anyway,
there's a strike going on now.
Yeah, and Kickstarter, I don't even think you can get Project We Love right now because of the strike. Because Sam, who's the lead guy for things like Project We Love around comics and so forth, is one of the striking employees.
When did this start?
About a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
Go to kickstarterunited.org and you can read more about it, bud.
Yeah, they're being very supportive of creators. Going, this is not they have a message out going, this is not to say do not back creators. Please continue to use Kickstarter. Please continue to back people who are creating things. But these are things that need to change for us.
Yeah, they told us as creators, please keep putting campaigns out there. In fact, on the kickstarterunited.org website, there's actually a campaign page of people that are promoting them. And so it's a reciprocal kind of a promotional thing.
I mean, I remember that one of Sam's predecessors, I think, was very excited because she'd gotten some department unionized. I don't know if this is like the long tail of
Oriana?
that.
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
I'm forgetting her name now, but she went I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe these guys unionized. I think that was part of the problem. I could be wrong about that piece.
I think it might have been like an attempt to do it.
I do know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. Her name's gonna pop to me in my head later, and then I'm gonna be kicking myself. But,
just message me.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are well on your way. I think you're gonna hustle it out and make it there.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Here we go. Katie, do you want me to play this video?
Go for it. Hi, I'm Katie Shaw, the cartoonist behind Dragon Child, a story that has been living rent-free in my brain for most of my life. As soon as I knew that I wanted to start making comics, I've been trying to tell a version of this fantasy story with dragons and elves wanting to live alongside of us. In high school, I decided to turn it into a modern-day fantasy, which all these years later has become a lot more mainstream. After making my own comics for over a decade, I find myself questioning some of the choices that I made early on. As new issues came out, I knew that I wanted to start combining them into volumes, a true comic book. The standard is a 6-issue trade, but it takes a long time to get there, so I started collecting 3 issues together into what I called a mini volume. half of the length of a standard volume of comics at a price point cheaper than the cost of all 3 comic issues together. Makes sense, right? Looking back, I made one major mistake. I released these books with covers that I had already used for one of the single issues, meaning that the mini volumes didn't stand out and commonly got confused with the issues that they shared a cover with. I'd get questions like, why is this book more expensive? It's the same as that one, right? And I'd have to answer that, in fact, no. This book has 3 issues in it instead of 1. And once they figured that out, then the books would sell fine. But when I finally did release my first full trade volume that did have its own unique cover, it sold great. So I posed the question to myself, would my mini volumes sell better if they did also have unique covers? So I'm launching this Kickstarter campaign to find out. For this new Kickstarter campaign, consider updating your Dragon Child comic book collection with a brand new set of these 3 new mini volumes that have their brand new art, as well as some extra behind the scenes content. And also consider adding in a sticker, print, original pencil remark, original inked art, or one of my handmade dragons. You know you want one. Let's have some fun and get those 3 books to the printers together. Thanks, guys.
All right, cool. All right, so Katie, walk us through us. What do we got?
Very cool.
Yeah. So we have, like I said, the 3 new covers that I made, and it's the third one has never been collected before, but the first 2, those are new versions there. And so far, 9-issue series. While this campaign's going, I'm working on writing the next 3, and it's basically, all these creatures are real, but they think we're scary and want to find a way to live alongside of us. And so that is Dragon Child. And like I said, I make all these crazy dragons myself as well, which my biggest goal going into the next year, realistically, is to spend less time working on that and more time working on the comics. It's this weird balance game that I play because early on, I decided that I wanted to make them, and it's really fun. But the problem is that the comic does not get out as fast as it should because I'm splitting that time. But these are some of the pages from each of the volumes. So I have sets of pages per volume there. Those are some of my elves from the second mini volume, and then my Griffin characters, along with some Australian cryptids there in the 3rd set. But yeah, we're off to a bit of a slow start, but I've noticed with my previous 2 campaigns that my backers tend to definitely come in the last third of the campaign to make me sweat.
Gotta love them.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting for me because I don't know if anybody else has run into this, but my printer from over a decade for my volumes, as of June, decided that they're no longer doing small press orders. So if it's under 50,000 for the order, they're not doing it. Oof. And I was like, okay, what? So for this campaign, the other big problem was going out and finding a new printer that was domestic. And luckily I did find one. And tomorrow I'm actually going to be picking up the proof copies. But
nice.
Has anybody else run into issues like that where they're just hearing totally new stories from printers nowadays?
I mean, do you want to name names of who you've been dealing with, or?
So I'll give you the previous name. So the previous printer was BR Printers, and they are traditionally more of a book company, so they don't just do comics. But they basically were like, yeah, we're pretty much just doing Scholastic and up, and just not doing any small press. So it was, nothing personal, but it was very much a, okay, now I need to scramble and figure something else out. And so, I am very pleased with what I was able to find. Accutech is the name of the new company I'm going with, which ironically is literally right down the road from where I'm at. So I'm totally happy with that result. But, it's never fun to find a new printer, especially when it's in the crunch of, I want to have the Kickstarter happen, but I can't do that if I can't print the thing. So, so that was very much my weird time frame. Was I wanted it to be a couple months ago, but due to the time that it took to just find that new printer, it wasn't happening. So that's where I'm here.
I'm having a pretty good experience with Mixam.
They were my second option.
Yeah, I mean, what I will say has been, just to keep it brief, was I mean, they're having a partnership with Kickstarter apparently.
I want to say it's like 5%.
Well, the
Something
joke
like
is that that's the 5% you get when you start your first order anyway. So they were very clever about dressing that up. What was kind of interesting, just to not to get too deep in the reads with this, but I've self-published something during the pandemic, and I was, initially we were looking at this overseas publisher, and then they couldn't give us any shipping estimate because of the supply chain interruption. So that meant that it could be 6 weeks from now or 6 months from now, and that was unacceptable because, and so and there were a lot of books that actually got stuck in the port of Long Beach, just literally in a queue. So I found Mixam, and it was just I couldn't believe I found them because it's they did really quality work, and they were locally based. Then what was kind of interesting was, like, last year I checked on their prices, like literally a year ago, and they were 3 times higher.
They're a broker. I don't think they're an actual printer. I think they're a broker, and everybody's prices went up, and so Mixam's had to go up with it.
Well, what was interesting was, so then at WonderCon this year, there was a rep for this Chinese company that was going around trying to get business. And,
I love that lady.
we all the same circles here. But what was interesting was, like, I was dealing with her, and she first boasted, and I don't want to crack this open too much, but she did say we're not going to be affected by tariffs. And then every subsequent email I had with her, it kind of went from being like, okay, we're putting a brave face on, to this is maybe we're going to be a little disruptive, to they're going to eat the cost, to this is not a good time. And then I went back to Mixam, and it seems like I don't know, maybe that's because there's more domestic business now that they're lowering their prices, but they were back to what they were previously and lower. So I've been having a really great experience with them.
Paper prices have gone down. That's basically what it is.
What's that?
The paper. That was a huge cost, but paper prices have gone down. The market has stabilized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I definitely wanted to stick with domestic because I started that way just from convenience. And with everything else that's going on, it's like, let's not play that tariff game and deal with how long it's going to take to physically get the books. Because one of the ideas with this campaign is, the art's done. So it's just a matter of once I physically get the books, then they go out.
Yeah.
But it's everything that I've seen from fellow creators that also use Mixam. Products look great. They were just a little bit more expensive than this other group. So, we shall see.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Katie, how many pages per volume?
Yes. So the first volume is 80 pages, and then the subsequent 2 are 88 apiece because each have a 32-page issue in them.
Gotcha. All right.
And then a couple little extras.
All right. Well, you got 22 days. Like you said, you gotta hustle, but you'll make it because you always do.
Yep. No, it's like I said, they're good at making me sweat.
Guys, man. All right, but the stuff always looks great. The toys look fantastic. Well, then I told you, the puppets always look fantastic. So
thank you.
Great book. Go pick it up.
Well, and one of the nice things about this campaign is, since it's one of the volumes, all volumes really, the remarks are an option. For an issue, I feel like it's not really a thing that makes sense for a campaign. So hopefully that buffer of people choosing that will help with hitting the goal. We shall see. One way to find out.
This is true. All right. Now we got Clash of the Classics.
This looks so good, by the way. I'm just going to tell you right now. I was like, what the hell? I mean, I clicked it, and I was like, bro, baller. Total baller. Nico's did a great job. Yeah.
The lips on that horse, though. That makes me happy.
That was his flourish. I'll give credit to Nikos on that. That was his idea. It made all the difference. So,
do you want me to play this video?
Yes, please.
Hi there. I'm Tom Pinchuk. You might know me from my comics Remember Andy Xenon and Hybrid Bastards. My next comic is Clash of the Classics, and I'm very excited about getting it directly into your hands as quickly as possible. But to do that, I need your help. It's kind of like Marvel's What If, except with famous adventure stories. So the setup is that we take characters from one classic book, drop them in the plot of another classic book, and then document all of the glorious chaos that unfolds. It's not a parody, but it's not entirely reverent either. Goal here is a bit punk rock. Yeah. I wanted to make it accurate to the books, to the characters, to the setting and so on, to make the crossover clash even that much more ridiculous. While we've done the homework, you don't have to. So we provided recaps of both stories, so if you're unfamiliar with either, you can just jump in and enjoy yourself. It's an anthology series, and this is the first issue of that, meaning that it's a one-shot, beginning, middle, and end, self-contained, you can enjoy. But when we're done with it, we'd really like to get to some further clashes that I've actually scripted. You have the power in your hands to maybe even accelerate our agenda. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because the plan right now is to make the best possible print edition of Don Quixote Fights the War of the Worlds. Why Kickstarter? If I have done comics at publishers, if Nikos has done comics at other publishers, why would we go through this route of self-publishing? Well, we have very particular ideas of how we want the book to be, for one. Secondly, doing an anthology series like this makes it a bit of a square peg of a book that doesn't neatly fit into publishing schemes. And thirdly, well, we're just wanting to get it to you as quickly as possible and cut out the middlemen. As the campaign unfolds, we have some great goodies in store. We have some really cool behind the panels material, an artist edition that Nikos is personally supervising, and at least one variant cover by one of my very favorite artists. So, join us on this journey on Kickstarter and catch the clash.
Hey, cool. It was nice. I liked it.
Thanks. Yeah, I called in some favors.
It's good to have friends in media, right?
Oh, yes.
So, Tom, walk us through it. What do we got?
Well, I mean, to take it beyond what was in there, in this case, the Martians have invaded 200 years earlier than expected. And because of that, Don Quixote winds up being the unlikely savior for humanity, because in all the time that he had been jousting with windmills, he's actually been training to slay Martian tripods. So the human resistance has to get used to dealing with a champion who's still cuckoo crazy. So that's like I said, it's not a parody, but it's not reverent. I think part of the ambition was really just to burn the whole house down in terms of making like a self-contained one shot where we're really not holding anything back. So part of the tension of it is that he's still nuts. He somehow is able to defeat these Martians, and all the Spaniards have to rely on him, even though they have to indulge his craziness. And then it turns out that craziness is a bit contagious as well. This whole project started and they said, we like you to work with you and do some comics. So I had this idea of this anthology series. We differed fairly quickly after that. And they were just kind of hanging on to it, letting it lie. And I was always very just frustrated that we weren't able to do it quite the way that I wanted to. We weren't going to be able to do the subsequent clashes. So I said, let's talk. Let me see if I can get the rights back to this. And now that I've had it, I pretty much immediately started the campaign to steer our own ship. So the plan is right now is that, again, like I said, it's a bit like What If, in the sense that each one is going to be about a collision of two different famous books. You're going to have something that's a complete story here, but I'm hoping that everybody will find the energy behind it a bit more fun, because this is definitely, I think what's going to set this apart from other mashups is that we've done the homework, but we're not expecting anybody else to do the homework. So it's, look, I mean, one of my inspirations was definitely like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and the approach that it took, because that is a warts and all. That is not a love letter to those characters or that era. And so this is not something that is presented where, you know, there's a loftiness to it at all. It's very much kind of have an anarchic stuff, take it to the extreme that we could, and then just, like I said, we're going to burn the house down so we can move on to burn another house down. And I think we're hoping that energy is going to be infectious to people. I think like what I want this to sort of appeal to anybody who's been in English class and has been a little bored with a teacher who's maybe not presenting the class. You might take it, and that's the part of, you know, that's the energy behind it. We're also offering the Nikos and I did another series called, a one shot, I should say, called Remember Andy Xenon. That's my time writing on Ben 10. It's the one story we couldn't tell on Ben 10, which was to show how a kid adventurer would handle adulthood. So in this case, he loses powers when he hits 18 and then has to adjust to life as a normal guy, but that's only the beginning. And there may be a unexpected comeback lurking around the corner for him. More stuff coming along, but I think he's really, in both of these books, he's just done real jaw-dropping work, and it was something that was, and part of the reason I really wanted to put through a lot of effort and, you know, jump through some hoops to get the rights back was because it was stuck to digital only at first, and I was like, this is going to look so beautiful in print. So we've been, you know, the red cover stock, and I've already, in fact, even gotten some proof copies of it that just look wonderful. So that's what I'm hoping is everybody's going to get a chance to join the fun.
All right, cool. It's really, really great. Obviously, you've done your research. So, I mean, why start with this? Well, obviously, you were commissioned by the company. Did they specifically ask for this story, or is this just the first story you came out with?
No, they're only the only way it really started. We did a little bit of brainstorming, and then we said, you know, maybe we're going to do some famous literary characters, you know, in the public domain. But beyond that, everything was really just me, because, or I guess for the rest, you know, the other two, there was just, I think I've always been, I always kind of loved the story of like the lunatic who's capable, meaning that, you know, it's still, you know, it's sort of like having your boss who's, you know, completely off his rocker, but you know, you do sort of with a lot of his eccentricities along the way. So that was the tension that, I don't know, I guess I just kind of had this mental image of, you know, Quixote dueling with the windmills and imagining that, you know, what if the giants were real, and what if, despite all logic, that had been training for him. I mean, I think actually, let me take a step back. The real creative motive for any of this stuff was to ruin the point of all these books. So if Don Quixote is about this tragedy of, I mean, I realized when I finally got around to properly reading Don Quixote that it was the kick-ass. So he's this rich guy. He's read lots of books of chivalry about King Arthur. He starts to think that he's won, even though he's in the modern era. I mean, that was when it was written. They were saying, "Oh, we're in modernity, and the era of knights is over." So there's a level of tragedy of that. Oh, if only he had been born earlier, maybe he would have been, you know, not in King Arthur's court. And then the tragedy of it is that he, you know, he was a man outside. It's the slogan we use. You know, he was a man, the right man in the wrong time. Well, what if the right time came for him, despite all logic? And, you know, that's the same philosophy I'm applying to. And again, I don't want to get ahead of anything with this, but you know, one of them is going to be Dracula's guest, Peter Pan, and the plan with that was, again, just to ruin the point of both of those books. So if you can imagine like a take on Peter Pan that is completely unsentimental, that is completely unconcerned with the notions of lost youth or how terrible it would be, there's a certain, again, like naughtiness to it that I think I had the most fun writing this, and I'm hoping that's going to come across to people as well.
All right, cool. All right. Well, yeah, for what you're gonna do, I think you're gonna make it because it's a really quality product. So I mean, it's a really good book.
Thanks. Yeah, you heard it here first, actually, but I do have the variant cover that I mentioned is we're going to be revealing it this week.
Cool.
So it's an artist that I'm a huge clue I've been giving. I always like try not to get my foot in my mouth with some of this stuff, but I'm one of the weirdos that really loved Amalgam comics. For anybody who remembers those, and yes,
Yeah.
Okay, good. Show of hands, yes.
Yes.
And so I, what was very interesting about this is that I think I went through a lot of effort to get to read. I got to read all about the 24 one shots in a with a little more of an adult size, and just realized some are good, some are not so good. I think like the best ones hit this very precise tone and balance between they're not taking themselves too seriously, but they're also not completely removed of emotional stakes and some sort of point. And that was something that I was really trying to capture with this. And one of the artists the artist I have for our variant is going to be, if you follow the campaign, I've gotten sketches from him. We've been doing a bit of back and forth already, so I didn't want to reveal it until we had the pencils done. There's a lot of moving parts with all these projects, I think, as everybody would know. But that's another element to it, is that I think I find a lot of success with writing if I reconnect to who I was when I was a kid. Put myself back in that mindset of like, what excited me, what was interesting to me, what was I attracted to. And like I said, this was definitely written from putting myself back in. I just took these two kind of stodgy volumes and smashed them together. I can't tell you how cool it is to be actually working with somebody on, even if it's just a variant on comics. It's a very full circle moment, and I'm hoping again that's an the word I keep coming back to is energy. That's going to come through to anybody who's gets involved with the project.
All right, cool. So, listen, like, great looking book. Everybody, go pick up a copy. It looks awesome.
Thank you.
Very nice. All right. Now it's time for the other time. All right.
Okay, we're done.
Good. Damn, it's not working. Look at
Good.
it.
We're finished. It's over. We're done with that.
Yep. So walk me through it. What do we got?
So this is the BD15 anthology. We started these things a couple of years ago as sort of a joke of like the PG-13, ratings and movies. So we did the BD13 anthology, and everybody kind of dug on it. And they're like, "You gonna do any more of these?" I said, "Well, I don't know. You want me to do more of these?" They're like, "Yeah." So now it's become an annual thing to kind of celebrate our birthday. So this is the BD15 anthology. They are 3 10-page stories in each of these books. If you want to scroll back up, the first story is this is her first solo story. She's appeared in the Critter series, of course, over time, but this is her first solo story. Also introduces characters for the first time, Sister Pentecost and Medusa there. This is done by Jason Hare and Todd Vertice. So they're doing an amazing job. So this connects directly to our Critterverse, story threads that work together with that. The second book is Princesses versus Zombies. So it's an expansion of the Princesses versus Zombies book that focuses on Pocahontas. And in our story, she is Pocahontas if she was a vampire. So Pocahontas in our story is a cosplayer who is very, very deep in what she does. And her idea for Halloween was Pocahontas if she was a vampire. And so everybody's always been talking about this character, but she's really connected a little bit deeper with her. This serves as sort of an origin, kind of a first story. As I've been writing this, I kind of wrote this sort of, it's like Pulp Fiction. I'm just kind of like, I'm over here, I'm over here, I'm over here, I'm over here, but then it all threads together in the primary series. So it's been really fun to do, and we get to finally get a little brand new. This is the Amityville Sorority Sisters. So I've always loved the Amityville Horror Story, all the crazy movies, all the ridiculous real stories from the Lutz family and so on. So I wanted to do a throwback to like the 70s sort of grindhouse / 80s style of horror films, with a little mix of like Quentin Tarantino style dialogue to it. So this is going to be a really than what I usually do. So it's going to definitely lean into like grindhouse 70s horror and you know, the blood and guts and stuff, which we don't usually do in a lot of our books. So it's an interesting little diversion from the stuff that we normally do. There's a handful of covers. So that's the regular cover. All the characters are on it. They're BD 13, 14, and 15 standing in the same street. You'll see that a little bit down, a little bit further. Nosferatu gets a cover, Amityville gets a cover, and so on. And if you don't have the books, you can get all three of them in one catch-up pack right there. Super easy. Then there's a Virgin variant set. There's a metal set for the Amityville cheerleaders. These are our 15-year anniversary books. On the left, we have Fast Times at Ridgemont High homage done by Pedro Perez. And on the right is the brand new Critter costume that gets debuted in these books, done by the original Critter artist, Jose Luis, and Elenia Di Napoli. So those are our special 15-year anniversary variant covers. And then the campaign itself is actually 2 books. The other book is like the old Marvel DC Who's Who books. So you get a piece of art, you get a description, tells you the first appearances of the characters, all that kind of stuff. So it's 32 pages. It's 32 different artists. Nobody got to double up. It's a straight alphabetical. So it goes through all of our books. It's not like it's all Critter characters, all Penny characters. It's a straight alphabetical. I went through all the books, found every character, created an alphabetic list, and just is the last of them on the last page of the book. It was going to be shorter. It was going to be less pages, but we've been working on this for a long time, and along the way we kept adding characters, so they kept getting dropped into the list. And I wanted Critter to be sure he was in the first issue, so I just said, well, we'll just make it a bigger book. So that's fine. Otherwise, pick and choose of all the variants that we've got. Amazing artists have done some great work on it. If you like the fancy stuff, these are all available as hollow foils. All that stuff's printed to order. So if we get, orders for 20, we're making 20 of them. And then there's the Big Dog Ink universe. So if you want to catch up on things you haven't tried before, there's trade paperbacks, catch up tiers, just things that maybe you haven't seen before. And Goth Day and Kaiju Epic and Antoinette. We do a lot of different stuff. And then we have a bunch of, at the bottom, there's a bunch of art prints that we are down to our last 5 to 10 copies across all of our different books by Eric Bastildua and Shannon Mayer and Nia Ruffino and all kinds of amazing artists, Natalie Sanders. So if you like art prints, you need some art for your wall. We're down to our last handful of these, and so I threw them up on the campaign. And then at the bottom, it's got all of our social media stuff. Follow us all over wherever you do your social media, and you'll be good to go. this is our last campaign of the year. And then in January, we start the kickoff for the 15-year anniversary of The Legend of Oz, The Wicked West. That'll be our focus for the bulk of next year.
All right. Very nice. Well, your campaigns are always forever. All right. So yeah, well, you're killing it as usual. So you're doing fine. You always knock it out the park. You always get great artists, good, interesting stories. Just fun stuff. So
yeah, well, it's just all stuff that's in my brain. Whatever I happen to wake up and feel like writing today, that's what we write. So it's superheroes, westerns, horror, historical fiction, whatever's running around in my head. That's what we do next.
All right, cool. Well, let me just pull up my campaign real quick. What is this? I have a campaign running currently for the Oswald Chronicles. Fallen Gods is a trade paperback. It's 140 pages, and it chronicles this one story. It's basically one graphic novel. It tells the story of Oswald, where he confronts a sorcerer who steals a mythical hammer from an ancient god, and the ancient god, his duty is to put the sun in the sky every morning. So he forges a sun, puts it in the sky, but the sorcerer steals the hammer, so the sun isn't going up. It's only affecting the Fae, but it will eventually affect mankind. And Oswald's brought out to try to help solve this issue. And the other thing is this is the very first project I ever did with Jade Gonzalez. This was probably like 14 years ago. And the artwork is not as good as it is now. But that's one of the things is I like the fact that if you look at this and you look at what she's doing now, you can see a huge growth in where she was and what she is now. But the story is still a lot of fun. And what's funny is mostly the subsequent work was in black and white. This story is actually in color. So this was colored by Liz Benaventura. She's also, I think, worked at Zenescope, IDW, a couple other companies. But I think she started with me. So, and like I said, it was a while ago. So, all right. So that's it. So it's already funded. I got another 14 days and we're at 1165, which is nice. We got 41 backers. So there we go.
Nice.
All right. Mr. Tom H., ask your question.
So this is a little bit outside the box, but somebody said something online a while back that it kind of got in my head, and so I'm kind of curious. Outside of the comic book world, art, comics themselves, the publishing aspect, all that kind of stuff. What? How do I say this? What do you know well enough that you could get up on stage and do a TED Talk about something? It could be interior decorating. It could be cars. It could be lawn work, whatever. Who are you? And what do you know that you could stand up on stage and say, I'm going to talk about this and be confident in what you're talking about?
Oh, interesting. Katie, you're up.
That doesn't have anything to do with comics. I would
outside
say
of the comic world.
Yeah. No, the Muppets.
Yeah, that's okay.
Muppets are early Disney animation. I could do a whole section on Bill Pete. The Muppets to start with for sure. Between all of the different behind the scenes, the creators themselves, how the Muppets are treated between events as they're sitting around, the fact that Piggy's treated like a queen, whether she's on an arm or not, all the various times in which they're, in, say, late night television, the fact that, you don't look at Kermit the Frog on a person as a puppet, but as a frog that's talking to you. That's what I would do. And frankly, I think that's why I make puppets of some of my characters is, I was just captivated by both the musicality of a lot of that stuff that was created for them. Because my dad, he plays the piano and got all of us interested in musicals. And so inevitably as a child, I was singing Christine Daae, Phantom of the Opera, from like the age of 5 thought that was normal, and then went to school and realized that nobody else was able to sing like me. But I can't write music to save my life. So, rather than going that route, singing other people's music, that's why I make my own art. But yeah, everything about the Muppets makes me happy. And so I'm, that nerd that just goes full on into learning all the lore.
Have you ever seen a real Muppet up close, Katie?
Yes, actually. So I forget what grade I was in there. From the age of 6 to 14, we lived in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and there was a surprising theater amount of things available, whether it was, more like off-Broadway type stuff or like the type that takes place in a stadium. And there was a rendition of Sesame Street where Oscar was the main character, and I want to say he ended up getting a wife. Couldn't tell you for the life of me what the name of the show was, but that was the basic premise. And we were able to get up close and personal and see, Oscar the Grouch. And that was just absolutely fantastic because he always was my favorite of the Sesame Street cast. And the fact that it was a Oscar central show, I was just like, yay, I'm so here for everything about this. Green's my favorite color. So, no notes whatsoever.
I just was struck by how coarse their felt is.
Yeah,
it's like a Brillo pad.
Yeah. All the and that stuff, I'll tell you firsthand, is the worst to work with. It sheds everywhere. I had the pleasure of talking to somebody who, through happenstance, ended up with like 10 bolts of Grover blue, and he's like, okay, what in the world do I do with 10 bolts of Grover felt? Well, faux fur in that case, but it's just and so we just. Talking puppets is great. It's another art form that I have great respect for, and it's magical. Great way to get people, interested in it, and it's, to me, it's fun to see again the disconnect between the human, even though we all know that is part of what makes it work, but you just see the puppet when it's happening, and I love it.
Hey, Katie, do you happen to live in the Atlanta area?
I don't. So I'm in Northern California.
Okay.
But
I live about 2 hours from Atlanta, and they have the Museum of Puppetry, and they have a huge like Jim Henson wing, and it is glorious.
I have one of my cousins. He and his family live out in Georgia, and so if I ever, have a chance, go and see them. It's I would love to. That, or if I were to ever have an excuse to, go the opposite direction up east and, see any of the stuff for Sesame Street, that would be great.
Yeah.
Cool. Tom P, how do you feel about the question? What could you get on stage and talk about for hours?
I've run 30 obstacle races, sparring races, Tough Mudder. I've done 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons. I did 8 last year.
Nice.
So it's kind of interesting because it's like, the qualifier on this was, something that had nothing to do with comics. And that was kind of what was part of the appeal for me was, I don't know. I think life's about balance. And it was about like 10 years ago where I was just on the convention circuit where I was kind of just thinking like, I need to do some activity that's got nothing to do with all this just to kind of be the yin to my, restore the yin and the yang in my life. And I was doing it for a while, and it wasn't until a friend pointed out, and I think I realized this right after the friend pointed this out, that they're kind of an off-brand adaptation of 300. It's like the logo is the same, more or less the same. Like when they have the hype man at the front gate, he's quoting Leonidas, about sparring, what is your profession, and then like every so often also like I'll be running and I'll see somebody in a bodysuit like dressed as like a superhero, and it's like, okay, there's no there's no getting away. But no, I don't know, every experience is just it's a real experience for me. Like I don't know, it's a hobby of mine. I definitely run with some people who I think it's all that they do. So I don't really have a comprehensive training program for it. I'll confess that almost every morning before I run one, I'm in bed and there's the devil on my shoulder saying, just go back to sleep. No one's gonna care if you don't show up. Like, why are you doing this for fun? And then I always, it takes a bit of willpower to get through that, but I'm always glad that I did. And even sometimes, when it kind of goes upside down. I've been at some where it was so rainy nobody could run because it was too slippery. There was one that I did in Temecula, and it was my first time I did a half marathon, and I was really down on myself because about a mile or two into it, I wanted to quit because it was so hot, and I was just thinking like I was really disappointed in myself, and I saw, there were also some people fainting on the side of the way, and they were getting sprayed with, hoses from a fire truck. But I don't think this is the day to test my limits. So I just kind of walked back to the starting line with my head in my hand. And I remember they had a lake nearby, and I just went to go wash off in the lake, and it was like hot as bath water. And then about 5 minutes later, there was an announcement that they said, we're sorry, but the race is canceled. And I actually talked to the people in the first aid tent, and they said that if they had something like 15 more casualties, and keep in mind a casualty doesn't always mean that somebody's dead. It means that somebody's injured, right? But if they had 15 more casualties, I think like either the county or the state would have had to get involved. So it went from, oh, well, I was really disappointed with myself to thinking like, oh, maybe that was the right call. I think I actually, was smart about that. But what I kind of love about it is that there's no predicting. It's not, I think sometimes when you get so used to something that's scripted and something that's you can pause and rewind and try over again, there is something kind of thrilling to you're getting through it, and whatever shape it's going to take, it's going to be that's what your experience is going to be, good or win, lose or draw. So I could give plenty of tips about best attire to wear. I've kind of learned the hard way. For instance, I always wear like compression sleeves and like for like pants and for the top, but I don't wear pants. I don't wear like gym pants, because if you wade through water, your pants just like fall off of you because they're way down. So I always wear shorts, that kind of stuff I could probably, or like if you're gonna, it's probably better to have gloves, but I always like chop the fingers off so they don't get full of water. And it's kind of surprising like how much traction you have on your fingers tips than you would with the glove. And these are all things I don't think I would have really come to those sorts of revelations. I could, I probably could just talk for 10 minutes about just tips, if you're doing it for your first time, what to wear, what to try, and all that sort of stuff. And, but it's also, I think it's funny too, because it's like, I've kind of resigned to the fact that I'm always doing it alone, because everybody I know just says like, you're crazy. You're nuts. Why are you doing this? I could never imagine doing it. And it's weird. It's like, the more they say that, the more it kind of encourages me to go on and do it. So, which I suppose is maybe that's the way that if I could bring it back around, that's kind of the way I relate to Quixote in my comic, in the sense that everybody's like, you're nuts. Why are you going off and doing this? And then you come back and they're like, wow, I can't believe you did it. So, yes. And Gina, that is correct. That is Gina in the chat. That's correct. So, yeah, that would be my TED Talk.
Have you ever considered doing an Ironman or just marathon?
Oh, wow. One thing I'll clarify about this is I'm not that fast of a runner. What I do like about the obstacle races is that it does, every obstacle kind of, depending on what you're training or what you're good at or what you're just like, your body's more disposed to, you can do well or do poorly at. I'm not fast. That's the thing. I'll just qualify this. I have no problem with jogging through the thing. I think when it comes to Ironmans, I don't know if I would be able to get away with that.
So as a qualification, the reason I asked the question, my dad, in response to my mother getting breast cancer, started doing cancer funding through doing Ironmans. And he's 6'3" and not exactly built to do that. He's great at the bike, great at the swimming, but the run is also the hard part for him. And mostly just because he's a big guy. And he found that similar concept of you're definitely in it alone, and a lot of that is they do not want you talking to people like your fellow competitors. Yeah, no, they like you are not. You are going single file on the bike. You're not supposed to talk to your fellow competitors. And it's very much you are in this sort of weird headspace getting through that event. And the people that are finishing at midnight are just as respected as the people that finish first.
Oh.
And they start at, I think, 7 a.m. But yeah, it's a crazy thing. And like, I think he ended up doing like 6 or 7 of the things over the years he was doing them. And he, my sisters and my mom and I, we would, be on the sidelines cheering for him and whatnot, and, get to know all the other competitors and what have you. But the one thing that I always thought was really interesting was which of the 3 legs of the race people had problems with. And one of the guys, it was always the swim, which is the first thing you do. And so he was an excellent athlete, but the man literally didn't know how to swim before he tried to do this. And so you have to finish it within, I want to say 45 minutes, or else you're out for the rest of the race. And it's
he didn't learn before he learned to swim on the. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so
that's the spot where more people die, right? Is the swim.
Well, yeah. Well, because there's so many people doing it all at once, and so but inevitably it took him a good 3 tries to where he finished the swim in time to then even attempt the rest of the race. But each time he got better at it. But the fact that he did it at all, like that was, it wasn't again I do it fast. It was I accomplished the thing. So yeah.
I mean, look, I think what's encouraging to me is I started in my 20s, and every time I've gone, there's always been guys in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s sometimes who run them. So that could be a nice challenge maybe down the road. I think that's I think what's great now is now that the challenge has been like elicited, I might like kind of laugh it off now, and then it'll be gnawing in my head like 3 years later, But I mean, it's interesting you bring that up, just because like one aspect of it that I also find kind of thrilling in its own way is that I've had to like relearn the lost art of small talk. Because, sometimes when you're like scaling a mountain, like in Big Bear, that's like one of the trails, you're not going fast. No one's going fast. So like you wind up just like, you're next to somebody for a mile or two, and you just wind up striking up conversation to pass the time because, you're both sort of toiling through this. And I've had some of the most random conversations with some people that, there was like one, I did one of the races the day that Kobe Bryant died, actually.
Ooh.
And it was it was also, I was walking through the same fog that, led to his helicopter, getting blind up there. And what was interesting was that like, a few years later, one of the guys I was running with was a Navy helicopter pilot. So we just wound up, I asked him a lot about, well, how does his job work? Or, what are his commitments? What's good for piloting? And then he wound up like I think he just kind of had this like story that he takes out for like, dinner parties or like at the bar. But he had about 20 minutes that he went on at length about why the pilot got everybody killed, for Kobe Bryant. And it was just like, this is kind of great. I mean, it's morbid, but I don't think I can't really think of any other circumstances where I'd be getting to like pick somebody's brain like this in terms of like, oh, okay, well, they relied too much on this autopilot, or they weren't trained on this particular autopilot, and that's what caused the problems later. So that I don't know if we had. I mean, that kind of makes me think of like shunning in the Amish, or like some, it's like you're not allowed to talk, during the time. But that'd definitely be a change of pace for sure.
Yeah. Well, and it's like if you're, so long as you're not like
Katie, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, you guys got a little bit off the beaten path. I gotta.
No worries.
Sorry about that. Scott.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on the question?
I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none. So like every topic I thought of, I'm like, I could think of like 3 people who would probably be better at it. But one talk that I have given that it's a topic that I'm fascinated by and I love it to death is just the process of adaptation. taking a story from one medium and translating it into another. I went to film school. I've written plays. I've written, sold a script. I've written for everything except for television. And I love adaptation. I love the questions that come up. I love the stories, the way you have to address story beats differently for the different mediums while still telling the same story, and how things need to be condensed or things need to be lengthened or whatever. I could go on about it for a long time and go through the actual process. Adaptation is something I absolutely adore. Strangely, I'm a nerd.
All right, cool. Charlie?
I mean, Tom took mine. So
Hey.
I've been running Spartan since 2013. I was an American Ninja Warrior on season 10 because of all that stuff. Yeah.
I'm not alone. I'm not
No, dude, you're
alone.
so not alone. Have you ever run with Dustin as the how long have you been running?
10 years. Spartan's like 10 years.
Okay, so you've come across Dustin Duro at least at some point. He usually wears really tight, short jeans, and he's.
I might recognize him, but
he started the whole Spartans and doing the whole announcement thing.
He's the hype man.
He's the hype man. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Then I would.
I'm sure. Yeah. Black or dark brown hair. Yeah, he's great. He's actually jacked. He's a great dude. Anyway. Yeah, I've been doing obstacle course racing since 2013, and I actually got in Men's Health magazine because I ran 100 events in one year, so it was pretty cool. So I could do the same thing. I could get up and talk about overcoming obstacles. I taught and did parkour, all that stuff in the off season. So yeah, I'm with you.
Your TED Talk would be better than mine.
I don't know about that. But, yeah, I'm 50 years old. I'm still like running these things and having a great time. And actually, oh shit, I actually have my shirt from Ninja Warrior on. So,
there you go.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like when the question came up about aptitudes, there are like maybe 5 or 6 obstacles that I call the Ninja Warrior ones that I have the damnedest time with. And it's like the Z wall. And,
I love the Z wall. Hug it.
Well, of course you do. Of course you do. My foot can't fit on the peg.
It helps that I'm also 6'3" and my arms are like, I can reach around the corner,
Okay.
I got you. I'll help you get through anything, man. You tell me what you need. I'll help you. Z-Wall, though, yeah, you got to hug it and you got to toe out, like, and just totally do that. It's weird.
Oh, wow.
It's fun. Yeah, I love it. I ran it back when they had the gladiators at the end. You had to jump over the fire, which
I was at that one too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good time.
They would sock you with the pugil stick, and then they found out that was too much of a liability.
Yeah, well, and for those of you who don't know what the hell we're talking about, so they at the end of the Spartan race,
we got derailed and we're just going right back down.
So here, I'll start the TED Talk. No, so at the end of the Spartan race, you jump over a fire, right? And it's this nice little whatever fire going. It's just cute and little, and sometimes they used to do this, they don't do it anymore. If you know somebody, or you can wave over to them like, hey, because you want a good photo, and they'll actually, like, as you're running, they'll throw gasoline on the fire, and you jump through a literal wall of fire. I've got a great photo on my Facebook where I am like just flying through this fucking freaking flame. I mean, a wall of fire. It's insane. I have no shirt on, nothing. I'm just like in tight shorts and shoes. But then after that, there's like 30 feet of like 6 dudes. They're all jacked and huge, and they have these pugil sticks, and they don't give a shit who you are. They are swinging like baseball swinging. They're like they're trying to knock you down, and that's why they had to get rid of them, because people got hurt. Yeah. But anyway, yes, I can talk about all day.
I am so glad that I did this today, because this is like when you talk to like the Disney adults who know that if you ask like the cast members the right thing, they can get you into like the bar they don't advertise. I've run all these, and I had no idea that I could be like, hey, can we throw a little gas on the fire here?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Damn. I mean, there's one coming up in San Luis Obispo next week. Maybe I'll keep that in mind.
Dude, I mean, if they still have the fires going, see if they'll do it. Yeah.
Nice. Wow. It's funny. I would like to say that I have something really interesting to say, like H.P. Lovecraft, MMA, just martial arts in general because I practiced when I was younger, before my knees got shot. But the only thing I could really give a TED talk on these days that's just so goddamn boring is management, corporate management. Yep, corporate management. It's what I do day in and day out. Just tell the people what to do.
Well, what martial art did you practice?
It's a needed skill, at least.
Yeah. Sikaran Goju.
What martial art did you practice though?
Sikaran Goju.
Oh, okay.
It's all shit of Goju-Ryu. And I remember my teacher was funny about it. He was like, I'm going to teach you how to kill people. But what I really got to teach you, what you really need to do is run. He says, you only need to know just enough to hit a person and run, and he was like, get away. He says, you're not a paid, he says, you're not a prize fighter, and that was the one thing that always stuck with me. He was like, don't fight anybody. It's not worth it. If you need to defend yourself and get away as quickly as you can. And that's it. The MMA stuff is just stuff that if I was young, I would have probably have gotten into hard and heavy, but and it's just something I enjoy a lot. So anyway, so that's it. But management, that's where I'm at. So it is what it is. Tom.
So the reason I asked this is this is kind of the background to it. Is you guys know who Gary V is? Gary Vaynerchuk.
Mm-hmm.
Right, who that is? I'm always curious as to who knows and who doesn't. Gary's a lot of things. He's a marketing guy, but he's also sort of a motivational speaker, and he's very into social media and how to present yourself and so on and so on and so on. I suggest everybody go find him. He's on Facebook. He's on all the TikToks. He does it all. So wherever you do social media, you can find him, Gary V. So one of his shows, he's talking about because people ask him like, well, how do I do this and how do I do that? And one of the shows he came up on, he was talking about is he asked somebody, well, like, what do you like? And they were like, what do you mean? Like, what do you like? Do you like movies? Do you like football? Do you like karate? Like, what do you like? What are you interested in? And so the person was, I don't remember what they said. They like, whatever. And he was like, well, that's it. That's what you do. That's what you make your content about, because that's what that's what you like, and that's what you can present to the people. And the response was very similar to my response. I was like, yeah, but isn't there anybody else that knows more than me? And he was like, it doesn't matter who else knows about it. You know about it. Use that as your sort of niche into social media and presentation of yourself and whatever, and so on and so on. And so I started to think about that, because I've done podcasts before. I've done my own. We do one on Wednesday nights with a friend of mine, Allison Lear, called The Oz Couple, where we just talk pop culture and Wizard of Oz stuff and all this kind of thing. But I've been on tons of other podcasts, like this guy's show a few times. And what I started to think about was there's been so many topics, either on purpose or tangential, as we've found out as these shows go, that we probably all know much more about things that we don't even realize we know about. I've been on shows where, like, Invincible came up, right? I have no idea where all this Invincible knowledge came from. Like, I don't know where it came from. The comic about Robert Kirkman, about the TV show, I don't know where it came from, but I was spewing Invincible information out. I've been on Godzilla shows where I fully assume I'm going to be just crushed in information and detail and so on. But I'm there saying things and people are like, well, how the hell do you know that? So, for me, everything for me, I've always been, as a kid through even now, I've been sort of a consumer of everything that's come through, but my consumerism has modified from consuming the entertainment of like a movie or a comic or a TV or something into the consumption of the creation of it. So sort of like Scott with the adaption, it's just sort of the storytelling of it, right? So when I watch a movie now, if I'm entertained, I probably will leave you alone. But as soon as I get bored, I start to break it all down. This camera is wrong. This lighting's wrong. The script is wrong. Like, and what's wrong and how do we fix it. And on the other side, like, this is brilliant, this is amazing, look what they did. So there's a lot of stuff that I can talk about in the storytelling sense. In some cases, Scott, like the adaptation sense, how does a movie become a comic book or some other form of media? As far as like a specific, I could easily do a TED Talk on the original Jaws movie, from understanding the story, the character, the dialogue, the camera work, the incorrect yellow barrel math that happens on the orca. I can debate whether or not there was a shark on the end of Quint's line, and I fully believe that there wasn't. And all the way to the idea that during the Indianapolis speech, Quint talks about how the Indianapolis went down in 12 minutes, right? So there's a shot towards the end of the film where Jaws is running around. He's got 3 barrels on him. He goes straight to the side of the boat, goes underneath. It cuts to a shot of Quint. And if you start a stopwatch from that moment, 12 minutes later, the orca is sinking and Quint is dead. So it ties directly into that 12 minutes of the orca speech. So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of nonsense that floats around in my head. And that's the kind of thing that then, kind of spools back to all my comics. But the point is, I think we know more than we think we know. And there, within this sort of podcast culture and so on, there's no reason really that we shouldn't be using that to sort of bring awareness to ourselves, versus just, everything that we do is buy my comic. Is like, hey, no, you know what? I have this story about the Muppets, and I have this story about running marathons, and not, and so on and so on. Use that stuff to make people aware of you. And then as they become aware of you, you can shuffle them off to, buy whatever it is that you're buying, theoretically, because, hey, I like Katie and I like the Muppets too. So maybe I like what she does with her dragons, and off we go.
All right, cool. Charlie, I'll give you the opportunity. If you have a softball question you might want to throw out there.
Yeah. So let's pull it back into comics. And what do you think? It's a 2-part question, so, and you can answer briefly. But what do you think is the most threatening thing to the perpetuation of comics today? Right. So, what's the biggest threat that you see in comics, and what brings you hope? And I actually stole those questions from Adam Beach. We did an interview session at Baltimore, and I was like, "Oh, those are great questions. I'm going to use those." So, there you go. Greatest threat, biggest hope.
Tom P.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll quote Dune in this case and say fear is the mind killer. Just because, look, I mentioned that I sold the show to Cartoon Network, right? And we were in development for 2 years. And the whole time I was working on, my eyes were completely wide open about development hell, and that the rug could be pulled out from underneath us the whole time. And so we still, we came in and did a presentation to the vice president. It was probably one of the most stressful 30 minutes of my life, because we were doing that over Zoom. And we'd already known about Warner Brothers having this acquisition that, the AT&T merger was pending, right? And we still got through that. And I remember having to go for a hike to just get some air afterwards. And then we got through. And it looked like, even though after the vice president got laid off, we were still kept on. And that went on for another 2 months, until eventually just, I was always aware that it was just it's like when you get to ask the question of if you could know the hour of your death and the means, would you want to know that and be always afraid of when that was going to happen, versus just enjoying your life up to the car, blowing you down. And, we just got canceled, and then it was as simple as that. Right. And what I always, where I'm kind of going with all this is that now Warner Brothers is potentially having another merger. Right. And they had another merger about 2 years ago. And so when I tell people oh, my show got canceled because of the Warner Brothers merger, people say, oh, they assume it must have been the one with Discovery. as opposed to the one with AT&T, right? And what I now is sort of like I've lost my innocence about in some regard is that whenever I watch like old movies on Max, I love its classic movie archive, and I think this kind of the same thing that Tom's talking about. The thing that I can't unsee anymore is the small print below the WB shield at the beginning of who was the parent company that decade.
Mm.
Was it AOL? Was it Time Magazine? And that's all stuff that you're not really supposed to be looking at. I think, like as a 99% of the audience is not really. It's not even that they're not even supposed to notice. They're not supposed to care, and they actively do not want to care. So they're going to skip over that to go watch the movie. But now that's a lot of significance that's always been in front of my face for the entirety of my life for a lot of movies that I liked. And what I would maybe add about that is that there's a lot of, I think circling back to what the other Tom was talking about. I read about the makings of some of these movies, and it always seemed like, there was some sort of halcyon day to be doing what you're doing, right? Like, when in the 80s that was a better time to be making movies. And like I read about the making of Ghostbusters, and that was like, I think Coca-Cola bought Columbia Pictures a little bit before that, and then that was a period of turmoil, but they still made one of the most beloved movies ever. No one really thinks about the turmoil that was going on, relating to that. So I guess what I'd say is like, that got me to be a little more cautious, or like a little less inclined maybe to like getting too lost in the trade sometimes, because I feel like, if you got something that you're passionate about and you're really just like dedicating your time to it, people are going to see that that's, the work is good and it's going to last. They're not really going to necessarily remember the conditions it was created under. And I'm kind of, I've also sort of been convinced that I do think that sometimes there's a lot to be said about how the press frames certain things, in terms of like, there's this merger coming up, and it's the biggest merger of all time, and it's never things are never going to be the same again after this corporate merger. And it's like, well, AOL bought Warner Brothers 25 years ago, and in fact that was the biggest corporate merger ever. And then within the space of about 2 years, AOL's business model fell out, and they were divested of, Warner Brothers divested themselves of that. So I just think that sometimes, in a weird way, it's like, fear, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Sometimes is that I can just say, like, anecdotally, it's just like, sometimes I think like, yeah, there's legitimate problems you have to deal with, and there's things that you have to, work around. I do think sometimes there are some of these bigger movements that people get a little, it kind of offsets like their energy in terms of what they're making. And I don't know if that's necessarily good, for your project or for your, for your audience, for your material. So I think life's about healthy balances. I would not say like, put your head in the sand, but I also think sometimes there is something to be said about like getting a little too far the other way. So I hope that makes sense.
All right, cool. Scott, what are your thoughts?
The first thing that came to mind for me, as far as a threat to the ongoing comic books in general, is accessibility. As indie creators, it's one of the hardest things for me to do is get my comic in front of people's eyes, because I have to break through the algorithm, I have to break through the noise to get someone to see it. And I'm directing them to a specific single website. And if you make it and get distributed or whatever, it's only going into comic book stores. I've been a manager, or I was a manager for 3 years. I continued to work at this comic book store here for the last 4 years or so. And, once you have to come to our store to find comics. Comics, when I was growing up, were in grocery stores, were in bookstores. They were everywhere. That's what got me into the comics. I was like, what is this spin rack of fun? And now you have to know, A, comic books exist. B, where's your local comic book store? And then once you get to the comic book store, it's frustrating to me that the big two, especially, their response to this has been, oh, look, our demographics are getting older. So all of the books now are being written for 40-year-old people, and so it's like it's really hard that I feel like we're losing the tail a little bit, and we're losing the people, an easy way for people to come in at 10 years old who want to see some of these cool things. They have to break through these barriers, and then when they get there, they're treated to the red band version of Civil War. It's all of this other stuff. And like, I'm writing a mature comic. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I do think some of that needs to be addressed by individuals, by the industry, by the companies, of like, how are you getting these books into people's hands? Now, my hope for that is I do see some of the companies actually trying to address this a little bit. DC has recently rolled out these compact editions that are wonderful. They're $10. You get the full story of Batman Court of Owls or Watchmen or Why the Last Man Standing, and they can get those into bookstores in the mall, and then hopefully someone will enjoy that book and go, can I find more of this? And hopefully we can pull them into the comic book store, and hopefully the comic book store has staff that go, oh, if you like that, you will like this. So that to me is one of my biggest fears, is just like the accessibility of this medium. And once they're able to finally access it, what are we offering them?
All right, cool. Katie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm always thinking about is the fact that I always have trouble finding time to read. And that's, somebody who wants to be reading. And so I think that, the one thing that I have to remind myself is that the only medium that I still sit down and read is comics. So, I listen to audiobooks for everything else when I'm working so that I can consume new media and enjoy that. But a comic, you can't do that. You have to physically sit down and read it. And so I, treat that sort of as the treat that I allow myself to then read something new. But that also then goes back to what Scott was saying on, how do you find it? And I think that one of the other things that's being done is, say, for example, Scholastic is getting in your Targets, getting in your Barnes and Nobles in ways that some of these other companies aren't necessarily able to do. But also just the mainstreamification of people going to cons more, so that so long as those of us that are making comics are physically there for people to see, that is a way that people can go and see that. And in the same way that, what saved the horse is automobiles. What saved, each mode of transportation or method of reading something, is hard for one reason or another. But what keeps people reading comics is the fact that it's fun. Mm-hmm. So long as we're continuing to create comics that make people excited about reading them, regardless of the age group that it's intended for, then we'll still be getting new people also wanting to create comics. I mean, it's one of the reasons I have in my portfolio, they're not for sale necessarily, but the actual boards for the comic, and the number of kids that come up and look at those and go, number one, where can I get those boards? Mm-hmm. How can I learn how to make something like that myself? That's why they're there, so that people can be inspired and want to make them and be the next people that are doing what we're doing now.
Cool. Tom H., what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback off of Scott a little bit with the awareness part, but I think the awareness, we've lived for a long time saying that it's hard to get comics. It's not hard to get comics anymore. Like, people can literally just get on their phone and buy comics on Amazon, on eBay. Like, getting comics is not difficult. But comics are where manga is. But the problem with the section of comic books versus manga is that the comic book section is chaos. There's no definitive, like, start here with Batman and go through 20 volumes or whatever. It's just whatever happens to be on the rack at the same time. So we need somebody in that sort of spectrum to kind of clean that up and put a little focus into that. And the manga people will eventually, because mangas for the most part are finite, and that's, you read Death Note and you're done. That's it. What else is there? At some point they'll ask, what else is there? They can move on to something as long as it's easy to get into. But the other side of comics, that's the awareness part, And this is something I've been kind of noticing for like the last 10 years, at least, as I've been doing comics, is most of the understanding of comic books to the general populace is that they're collectible before they're readable. And people always think that because they hear Action Comics #1 is $10 million, first appearance of Wolverine is $1,000, in their brain, they're like, well, I can't afford that. I'm like, well, you don't have to afford that. That's what the trade paperbacks are for, collected editions. Regular books are like $5. They come out every month, whatever. But the general populace thinks that comics start as a collectible first, and we have to kick that part of it so that people understand that even though, yes, it's more expensive than it used to be, it's still reading material. It's like buying a book at a bookstore, even though it's just a smaller floppy. But again, the trade paperback market is blowing up. Omnibus books, like all that stuff's available. It should be easier now than ever to convert people into comic book readers. But we have to get the mindset out of, I don't want to collect them, I want to read them. Fine. Go to that bookshelf. There's tons of things you can just read.
It also makes me sad that we still end up finding those people that say, I want my kid to read less comics and more real books. Ignoring the fact that they're going to be just as excited about reading anything if they find a comic that they really dig.
Yeah.
I've talked to so many parents at the store going, this is your gateway drug into any other book.
Yeah.
Let them find a character or something that looks interesting, and Batman will lead to the Odyssey, will lead to other things. Just let them read something.
Yes. No, I read Moby Dick because Phone Bone, that was his favorite book.
Nice.
And so 11 years old, I was reading Herman Melville and being like, why are they not on the boat yet?
I just met Jeff Smith 2 weekends ago for the first time, and what a sweet, sweet dude. Oh my God. Yes. So anyway.
We'll see if mine leads them to Don Quixote or away from it.
Have you ever listened to the musical?
Man of La Mancha?
Mm-hmm.
I have not properly listened to it, though.
Oh, it's so good.
It's very good.
Impossible Dream. Oh, yeah. Do recommend.
On my list.
So Charlie, just to clarify, what are we looking at? Dread, and then what makes us hopeful?
Yeah, your greatest hope for comics.
Okay.
Like, what's the one thing that makes you go, you know what, there's a bright spot. I can see the light, kind of thing.
Okay. Well, the one bright spot that I see now is the fact that we do see different folks getting into distribution, right? So you have Filbo, we have Universal coming in, and I hear rumblings of 2 or 3 others coming in. How that's going to affect us all as independent comic publishers, I don't know. But there is some hope, I feel, of getting us out to the wider market, right? At least through regular retail channels. Getting to even bigger channels, that's a little bit more difficult. But at least I think if independent creators can get out there and get into stores, I think that's something I want to see. I want to see more of that. So that's all I got. Charlie, please answer your own question.
Well, I'll answer the way I answered when Adam asked me in the comics. The chair is what I was sitting in. I think the one thing that is our biggest heel, our biggest thing that could cause injury to the market is the lack of innovation. And what I mean by that is, we all keep creating the same kinds of things, and that's fine. That part is historical. Like, you can go back to the cave drawing stage. Like, people have always been drawing something to tell a story, right? So that part is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, everyone goes, well, distribution's a problem. You brought it up, right? Distribution's a problem, and getting in front of things. I think a lack of innovating and finding new ways to put your book in front of somebody instead of passively waiting for it to get in front of somebody is what hurts comics, and what will continue to hurt comics if we don't find better new ways to do it without relying on all these middlemen, right? And I'll never forget, I was in Baltimore actually about 3-4 years ago when the whole Diamond thing started coming out, and I'm sitting there having dinner with Pat Shan and a bunch of other folks, and Pat holds up his glass and says, "The middleman's dead. Long live the middleman." And his point was, and if you know Pat's, we call him Six Figure Shan because he runs these giant, incredibly successful Kickstarter campaigns. like nobody's doing. Pat has found a way to innovate and to market his books and to make it a living more than just a living. He's enjoying himself. He's having a great time. He's hiring new people. He's creating jobs, literally. And so, Pat's found a way. We all, as an industry, kind of have to find something new, I think. But I think innovation or a lack thereof is one, not going wide with channels and things like that. What gives me hope for comics is this, right? That there's a community that gives a shit, that people care about it, that people do read our books, that people are backing our books. They continue to back our books. When I look at my Kickstarter campaigns, I always look at, I tell people all the time when you're especially when they're new to Kickstarter, like always go to your dashboard and go to advanced analytics. And there's one number you should always be looking at on that advanced analytics page is new to me backers. Now, if it's your first campaign, it's worthless because that's, they're all new to you. But as I'm in my 15th or 16th, I'm in my 20th campaign. Holy crap. So I'm 20 campaigns in and I can go and look at that advanced analytics and I should see a good growth number there. And to me, I see more and more people backing my books. Some of them are new to Kickstarter. You go to their profiles and they backed one other campaign. You go, wow. So more people are getting into comics now than ever. And I think it's just a perception that we're creating for ourselves that comics are dying. And I hate when people say that. The numbers show otherwise. But I think what's happened is it's shifting. So anyway, what brings me hope is that people are out there and they do care about comics. And I go to shows and Comic-Cons and I see thousands upon thousands of people walking by multiple times looking at things and shopping and buying things. And they got armloads of books. And I go to my comic store and they're thriving. And I go, wow, this is what brings me hope, is that new people are finding books. They're finding ways they're finding the epicoses, right, of the world, the comic shops of the world. Gateway Comics is my local shop because they went to a show or something like that. And it really kind of brought a new attention to them. Some are manga readers who never would look at a comic book, but they go, oh, this is just, manga is just comics. It is. And honestly, it's like most of it's independent comics. It's just like us. So anyway, that's what gives me hope.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was an awesome show. So we're at the end of it. So let's start with Scott. Scott, where can we find you and your work, sir?
Obviously go to Kickstarter. Otherwise, you can pretty much, if you go to any of your social medias and you type in Scott Fogg, you will find me there. And every single one of my profiles has the same Linktree account where you can, or link, I should say, where you can find me everywhere else. So I'm not hard to find.
All right, cool.
And
Sorry.
You can find Dragon Child on Kickstarter as well. But if you look up Dragon Child comic on everything except for Twitter, where it's Dragon Child KS, it was a little bit too long. See the link tree to everything else on that as well.
All right, cool. Tom.
Well, thanks. Like I said, you can just look up Tom Pinchuk. I said, thanks to social media, I'm aware that there's exactly 2 other Tom Pinchuks out there. So you got a 1 in 3 shot of finding me on your social media choice. A big hint is that one of them has a goatee, so he's the evil version of me. He's my doppelganger. So if we ever meet, one of us is going to have to kill the other one. But thankfully, we've stayed in our lanes. Look up Clash of the Classics on Kickstarter. That's a good place to start. Please start there, and then you can find me. Like I said, just Pinchuk. It's just the spelling that always tips people off. So Tom Pinchuk on your platform of choice.
Cool. Charlie.
Well, pretty much everywhere I am what you see right there, except Instagram, because they hosed my account and locked me out of it, and they wouldn't even let me back in through my other Meta accounts, and so it has a dot between my 2 names here. So it's either Charlie McElvy or Charlie.McElvy. I'm everywhere. I'm mostly on Facebook and Twitter. I am on Instagram quite a bit, but yeah, wherever. And come find me. And I have, I have almost 24 Kickstarters going, so you can go in Kickstarter, search my name, and probably find my campaigns out there somewhere. And the one I'm running right now is with the lovely Scottish Fogg right there. So,
all right, cool. Mr. Hutchison.
BigDogInk.com. You can get all kinds of our books there, trade paperbacks, single issues, whatever you need. Kickstarter is running for 10 more days, so we end a week from Wednesday night.
All right, cool. You can find me here on YouTube just about every Sunday. This Tuesday, I'll be on a show with Rob Multari where we discuss problems in comic books. Basically, what it is, it's a panel show where someone brings us their issue that they're having in comics, and we discuss that issue with the other panel members, and we try to help that person out with that issue, and then we'll just move on. If anybody wants to come on this Tuesday, let me know. I have 2 slots open. So, other than that.
When you say issue, do you mean the problem they have or an issue of a comic book?
No. A problem they have in comics, in publishing, or in something. It could be.
He said the same thing I was thinking. Thank you, Tom.
Just making sure.
Yeah, no. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Currently on Kickstarter with the Oswald Chronicles, and probably Magi's Grace number 3 in probably another couple weeks. And please, everyone, remember, check out the show notes. In those show notes is everyone's links. All right, those links, please click on those links. Buy these books. All of these creators are putting their heart and souls into their books. So please pick up books, buy their books. They're doing great work. So thank you so much, everybody. And just remember, read more indie comics, especially ours. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, JD.
Yes,
Thanks, JD.
Thank you.